principle is freedom of speech. If everyone doesn't have freedom to speak, then there's no freedom of speech. All that's left is what is acceptable to speak. And that acceptability is being squeezed and squeezed and squeezed and squeezed. So things that were perfectly okay to say not that long ago will now get you banned or demonized or whatever. What it comes down to is this. What I've been saying now for 34 years is that a network of secret societies, fiercely compartmentalized, so most of the people in the secret societies don't know the big story, have been pushing the world towards a global dystopia. And of course, for a long time, it didn't seem that that was the case because people were getting on with their lives and they were posting on the social media and it was all right. It started to dawn on people that a global dystopia, not least a digital concentration camp, thus the end of cash, which I predicted in 1992, by the way, in a book, is unfolding before our eyes. 15-minute cities, all the rest of it. The war on the motorists, the war on movement. So then you look at that and you think, and lots of people have said this to me, a few people can't control the world. It's not possible. Well, you know the sad thing, it's a doddle. It's a doddle because of two reasons. The second one I'll come to. But the first one is relevant to your question. Freedom of speech. What is that? Freedom of opinion, freedom of information. And how do we form our perceptions from information we receive? It might be a Facebook post, it might be the 10 o'clock news, whatever. It might be someone you meet. But we form our perceptions from information received. Now, from perception comes behavior. We behave as we do because we perceive as we do, and we perceive as we do because of the information we receive. So if you want to control people's behavior, you have to control their perception. And you do that by increasingly, through this hysterical level of extreme censorship now, you hijack the sources of information that people are hearing, so they only hear your narrative. People only hear one story. They're almost certainly going to believe it in the absence of anything to challenge it. So the reason we don't have free debate is because the official narratives do not stand up to scrutiny, even the mildest scrutiny. And thus, if you had an open debate, then the official narrative will be all over the floor. So what do? If you control the global media, if you control Silicon Valley, indeed you created it, you make sure you don't have that debate. And you do that by censorship. And I would make this point too, that censorship is not an expression of power. People with real power, people with self-security, they don't want to censor anybody. People who are confident that what they say will stand up to scrutiny don't want to censor anybody. They also realize that people having different opinions to you is the very foundation of human freedom. And once that's gone, it's over. There is no freedom. If you have a narrative you know won't stand up to scrutiny, if there is a perception you want to impose upon the people through suppression of the absence of any alternative, then open debate and the free flow of information terrifies you. So what we're looking at with this censorship through Silicon Valley, the media, and anything else that moves is not an expression of power. It's an expression of weakness. It's saying to you, we know that our narrative won't stand up, so we're not going to let it be challenged. But as we'll come to, in terms of how this, what I call the global co operates and its structure, if you look at where Silicon Valley came from, it came out of things like DARPA, the technological development arm of the Pentagon. It came out of Icke, InQtel or IQT, the technological development arm of the CIA. It's a cooperation, Silicon Valley. for reasons I can explain why the internet has become what it is. And so what you've got is two masks on the same face, and one is censoring to protect the other, so the narrative can become the dominant one, and people don't hear anything else. And they're in the process of now playing it again. So the stadium in which this whole dystopia direction is played out is perception. Control perception, you control behavior. And what is human society? It's the sum total of human behavior, which is the sum total of human perception. This is where it all goes on. We can talk about Klaus Schwab and the World Economic Forum and Bill Gates and all this stuff, and that's all playing out, and we need to know about it. But what it comes down is who controls human perception, therefore who controls human behavior. And that's why freedom of speech disappearing is so fundamental to human freedom in general. This network, it would seem when you start to research it that it's all powerful. It's not. But what it is brilliant at understanding the human psyche. It understands that if you press this button, you'll get that outcome. You press this button, you're going to get that response. That's brilliant at that. And the four-letter word that controls the world, the real weapon above all others, is fear. And if you can get people frightened, it's a simple psychological response. If you can get people frightened, they will look outside of themselves for something or someone that can protect them from what they fear. And interestingly, from about 1996, I traveled America extensively. And I met, so many people, whistleblowers in the military, whistleblowers in the intelligence community. And I met loads of people who were involved in MKUltra, the infamous mind control project in America, military, government, went into Canada as well. And this in the 70s came out publicly, and there was a Rockefeller inquiry into it, and Rockefeller was involved in it. That's how it works. So I talked to loads of people that were involved in MKUltra, this individual mind control operation with all the techniques, and I learned about the techniques. If you get people in fear, but that they're going to die, the fear of death is, a great fear. A fear of death, what is that? Fear of the unknown. So why don't we explore about death? Oh no, we don't want to do that. No, we'll just see what's on the telly and what have you. We won't explore the big picture and the big questions. Because if we realize that actually we're consciousness and there is no death, only death of the body, then maybe we won't be as frightened as we were before. So we'll keep them in fear of the unknown. If you look at the social media, first of all, the censorship means that people can basically only go so far, but it is a vehicle for division. It's a vehicle for abuse. It's a vehicle for ridicule. And it's not a vehicle for coming together. And therefore, it's playing into the hands of this cult, because if you are a few and you want to control the many, you have to divide and rule the many. You can't control 8 billion people when you're a relative handful by comparison, unless the 8 billion play a central role in their own control. And people say that the word yes is positive and the word no is negative. Not true. We've got into this mess. We've got into this unfolding dystopia by continually saying yes. Yes, sir. No, sir. Okay, sir. Anything you say, sir. Or, well, I don't want to do it, sir, but I'm frightened of the consequences of not doing it, so I'm going to do it as well, just like them, but just don't question anything. That's how we got into this mess. And it's no that's going to get us out of it. No, I'm not doing that. No, I'm not cooperating with my own enslavement. That's the way we're going to get out of it. And what happens with social media is it's basically a brawl. It's just a verbal keyboard brawl that goes on. But through that, for intelligent people who are discerning, you can get nuggets of truth and information out that circulates. And, let's look at the internet. It's an interesting point, because the internet now and social media now is not how it started out. I remember when it started, before it started, even if I was doing an event or I was trying to get information out, you stood in the street and you handed leaflets out. And then suddenly this internet came along. And we had the free flow of information for a while. And for people like me, it was fantastic. But, you put a fishing line out. And then when you catch the fish, you pull the fishing line in. Gotcha. And this is what the internet really is, I would suggest. First of all, DARPA, the technological development arm of the Pentagon, claims credit openly for the creation of the internet. And it's military technology it's based on, right? So this was the thing. Number one, you create the internet, but you've got to pull the population in so you don't censor. You don't censor. You just have the free flow of information. You don't like it, but it's necessary. And as that unfolds, more and more people come onto the internet. Oh, yeah, it's cool. God, this is good. You can say what you like. And you pay, oh, yeah, it's really great. And as more people use that as a form of communication, so the other forms of communication, the newspapers, the television, etc., they start to go down in their audience levels and their influence, and the internet starts to dominate. What you're waiting for is that point, we're now past it, where the internet dominates communication and has so infiltrated human society technologically via everything being connected to the internet that there's no turning back. Gotcha. Okay. Now we'll start censoring. Okay? We don't like censorship. Oh, really? How else are you going to communicate apart from with us, right?
They're all addicted.
Right? Yeah,
right. Got on the drug.
That's how it goes. And there's another thing. I noticed when the internet was unfolding that you had companies that were using the internet and trying to develop their business through the internet, but they had a bottom line. They had a bottom line they had to think about. In other words, I can't lose so much money that I go out of business. So I've got to operate within the confines of my income and what profit I make and what have you. But there were certain companies that didn't have that problem.
Yeah.
People like Facebook, people like Amazon, people like Google. When they were losing vast amounts of money as they were building their near monopolies now, more money was always available. And then they started buying up other companies like Facebook, now owns Instagram and all this other stuff. And they started building these monopolies. And for instance, Amazon started out as a book company. Yeah. And as a book-selling company, they were making a big losses year after year. But the money was always available to keep them going, all that stuff, and invest and expand, and they expanded. Now they're expanded into selling every bloody thing. And the high streets and the individual businesses, they're all disappearing, right? And so you get a point where your near monopoly is built with your Facebooks and your Googles and stuff. And that's when they started the real censorship. Because it's like, again, well, who you gonna communicate with through if you don't do it with us? Google. Oh yeah, I'm gonna Google this already. I'm not getting the results. I thought, no. You know why? Because Google is fixing the search engine and only putting in the main pages what the system wants you to believe, and keeping out of those search engines stuff that, because I saw it myself. I would post things on my website in the early days. Boom, it would go straight to the top of the Google listings if you put the right word sequence in, right? You didn't have to put many words in to get me at the top. And now it just disappeared. And you get Facebook, I had about the best part of 1 million. What I call them followers. I don't like that word, but people that were looking at my stuff, and I was going up like thousands a week. Then it stopped.
Shadow banned.
Just stopped. Shadow banned. Just stopped. And then it started to fall. Went down to 800,000 and fell. And then I was cut altogether. So the censorship kicked in once, just like with the internet. These major companies had reached a point of near monopoly. And with Amazon now, it's if you're selling the kind of things that Amazon sells, it must be terrifying. Because they've got this vast amount of wealth that can basically dominate the market of any of it. And this has been systematic. So we're moving to a point in terms of business where the idea is that global sales, global production even, will be in the hands of an incredibly small number of corporations. Just as the media ownership has got smaller and smaller in terms of corporations to a handful now that basically control the global media. A handful of corporations basically control Silicon Valley. And this is a very simple process, which I've written about at length. You can pick this cult up in places like Babylon and the Middle East and Egypt. And then you can follow it through the Roman Empire and then up into Northern Europe with the Roman Empire and then the European empires, and they colonized the world. Well, as they colonized the world, this cult was going out with them. And then we had this point of decolonization, where apparently these countries got their so-called freedom back. But it was a sleight of hand. What was left out in those former colonized countries, actually formerly openly colonized countries, was the secret society networks and certain bloodline families that run the show. And they've gone on controlling those countries ever since. And so the colonization allowed this global cult to go global. And then you had globalization, which was the centralization of power in every area of our lives. And it's a simple kind of dynamic. The more you centralize power, it's now on a global level, the more or the fewer are dictating to ever more many. And the other part of the dynamic is the more you centralize power, the more power at the center you have to centralize even quicker. So the centralization gets faster and faster. And if you look at globalization, it's got faster and faster and faster until now we have basically a handful of multi-billionaires who are calling the shots of, in effect, the world economy. And so it's moved in a direction very, very fast now that a ridiculously few people are actually running the global economy, the global financial system, the global media, Silicon Valley, and so on. And through that, they're running global governments. They're running governments all over the world.
Is it too late to turn the bus round?
Well, I think it's time to get off the frickin' bus. You can as long as you stay independent. If you are a corporate entity with corporate shareholders, which is the way Rumble operates, then you're increasingly going to come under pressure from those shareholders. I mean, you see, these mega global investment operations like BlackRock and Vanguard and State Street and Fidelity Investments, BlackRock alone has $10 trillion in investments of other people's money, by the way, mostly. And so you have, and we're seeing BlackRock. In fact, the BlackRock CEO, Larry Fink, has actually openly said this is what he's doing. You invest in all these companies, and through that investment, you get a serious impact on the policy of the corporation, right? So then you start coordinating the same policy between the corporations. And you've got the transgender thing through all the different corporations. They're all part of imposing. It's what they call go woke, go broke, isn't it? I mean,
but they don't seem to care though.
Well, they don't seem to care because this is the thing I've been trying to get across over the years. People say it's all about money. No, it's not. No, it's not. It's all about control. But control of money is part of control of people. If you can control the distribution of money so that you have it and your target population doesn't, well, what is freedom? Freedom is the ability to choose. Freedom is choice. The more choices you have, the more freedom you have. The less choice you have, the less freedom you have. And in the world as it's been constructed, money is a massive decider of choice. Ask people what they'd really like to do with their lives, and then ask them why they're not doing it. And they say, I haven't got the money, mate. So money, control of money is control of choice, and control of choice is control of freedom, who has it and who doesn't. And so it's not about money except as a vehicle for control. Yes, your Jeff Bezoses and your Bill Gates and all these people, they use their wealth to advance the agenda, and in doing so, make more wealth. Like Gates with a lot of things like buying up. He's the biggest owner of farmland in America, just at the time as this global cult wants to control the supply and distribution of food, because if you want to control the population, then a fundamental way of doing it is to control the basics of survival of the population. So if you look at it, they're targeting energy, they're targeting food, they're targeting the water supply, they're targeting all these basics of human survival. They're even messing with the bloody atmosphere. And whatever you are dependent upon, you are controlled by. So what they're trying to do is to control all these basics of survival, so we become dependent on them, who are deciding who have the basics of survival and who doesn't. And that's another expression of the control of money and how you can use it to impose literal control of the population. But money is the vehicle, it's not the end. These people have so much, quote, money, it's unbelievable. $10 trillion of investments, BlackRock. I mean, some of these families, he's a multi-billionaire, he's got hundreds of billion. Oh, what? That's a round of drinks, mate, in the way that they've controlled the money. Well, my philosophy over the years, like I say, I've been investigating all this for 34 years. If you can see them, they're gophers. They might be phenomenally rich gophers like Gates, but they're gophers, like Klaus Schwab, gopher. We're powerful. What? The people above you, okay? You'd wet your pants if you spoke out of turn, right? So what it is you've got this construct in which these few are imposing upon the many, not least through fear. But the hierarchy that's doing it is also a hierarchy of fear. They're terrified. Yeah, well, it's two. That's a great question. But there's two levels to that. If I could just give a picture of how easy it is for the few to control the many if certain things are in place. The inner core of this cult globally. If you got the inner circle of the inner circle, you get them in a single room, right? So you think of a pyramid, and you've got the inner circle of the cult at the top, and you've got the global population, 8 billion people at the bottom. And what happens is, for them to impose their will on all those people requires a sequence of imposition and acquiescence. It's real simple how it works. So that inner circle imposes its will, its agenda, action, upon the level below it, which then acquiesces to that and imposes it on the level below. And to answer the question, very, very soon after you come down from that pyramid peak, you are at the level of Bill Gates and people like that, Klaus Schwab. Yes, they do know, but compared with the size of the pyramid, you're not far down before you're dealing with people who have no idea there is a cult, never mind a bloody agenda. All they're doing is acquiescing to their perceived superior level and then imposing it upon the level below them. So a central government might say to a local council, this is what the policy is going to be, and all the people in the local council then impose it on the people in their area. This is how it works. So you come down this pyramid of imposition, acquiescence, imposition, acquiescence, imposition, acquiescence, and then you reach the point where you've got the mass of the people. And if we, as a population, then acquiesce to that level of the pyramid that's seeking to impose on us, that's governments, local governments, authority in general, the law enforcement, the courts, all that stuff, then we create a circuit. We create an electrical circuit, if you like, between the mass of the population and the few at the top. That circuit is imposition, acquiescence, imposition, acquiescence. And it means that the will of those tiny few at the top of the pyramid now is imposed upon the general population. And the vast majority in that pyramid of imposition, acquiescence have no idea that they exist. I started investigating this in the early 1990s, and it's clear as day to me now how it works, because people say a few can't control the world, but with this structure, they can, because most of the people in the structure have no idea that what they do every day is advancing an agenda they know nothing about. So this is how it works. In the center, if people just imagine a massive spider's web encircling the planet, and each of the strands in the web is a secret society, a semi-secret group, or governments, government agencies, World Health Organization, Silicon Valley, in the world of the seen. So the spider is deep in the hidden. That's why I say, if you can see the person, however much money they may seem to have, they're still a gopher. The real power's never seen. And around the spider is the most exclusive secret societies. Many of these don't even have names. It makes them harder to track. The members of that level of secret society will know pretty much the big picture. They'll know where it's meant to go and why and all the connections. And then you come out from those strands, and you're still in the hidden, but now you're meeting secret societies we know about, the Freemasons. And when I say that, which again comes to your question, I'm not saying Bill and Joe down the bloody lodge. These secret societies, by their very nature, are fiercely compartmentalized. The more exclusive they are, the more compartmentalized they are. So people are, say, a Freemason, but they're not trying to manipulate the bloody world, but they're part of something in which the inner core is. And you have others like the Knights of Malta, the Knights Templar, Opus Dei, the inner core of the Jesuit order. There's loads and loads of these secret societies. But ultimately, if you go deep enough, they interlock. And at that interlocking level, they're all on the same side, pushing the same agenda. So you're coming out and you're still in the hidden. And then you reach the point on the web that I call the cusp. And this is where the hidden meets the seen. And at this point, you've got organizations, again, fiercely compartmentalized, that their job is to take the agenda from the hidden and to play it out in the seen. So you're looking at the World Economic Forum. That's at this cusp. You're looking at the Bilderberg Group, the Council on Foreign Relations. Also at this cusp, you've got so-called NGOs, an explosion of them, non-governmental organizations, many of them fundamentally important ones, funded by people like George Soros, now his son, Alexander. And then you've got at the cusp also this other explosion of think tanks. And what the think tanks are, they're there to influence policy. To influence perception. And again, all these organizations are fiercely compartmentalized. So the inner core will know why it's being done. The rank and file who are following the inner core's direction most of them will have no idea. So the Soros organizations that he funds through this Open Society Foundation network, many of the people in them that are advancing the agenda, like open borders, for instance, will think it's for the good of people who are allowed in, and I'm a humanitarian. But at the inner core, they know it's for a completely different reason why they're doing it. And then you come out into the world of the scene, and this is when you appreciate the web, that the apparently random become coldly calculated. One of the things I've been trying to do over these decades is to inform these levels of these organizations that think they're doing it for one reason, just say, look at the pattern. This is why it's happening. And it is starting to happen. I remember once I spoke in Earl's Court, funnily enough, a few years ago now, and a guy came up to me afterwards, and he had been an executive of Shell Oil in South America. And he said to me, he's retired. He said, I've just learned today why I was asked and told to do certain things that I never understood why I was told to do them. And this is how it works. It's all compartmentalized. But once you grasp this web structure, and we come out, like I say, into the world of the scene, that's when you start to understand why things happen and why people do things that make no sense otherwise. So, again, corporations, the banking system, governments, government agencies, Silicon Valley, global media, they're fiercely compartmentalized, but in all of them, there's a point where they attach to the web. And at that point, they're the same organization pushing the same agenda, while most of the people working for them won't know that. So the web is protecting the web so the web's agenda can unfold. And so this part of the web says yes to that part of the web, and the web agenda is played out. This is how it works. And it's like when people say, why do they do that? There seems to be no sensible reason why they would do that. Well, it's the web agenda. That's why it happened. Yeah, well, the outcome is very important, because I have this phrase, know the outcome and you'll see the journey. If you don't know the outcome that's planned, then everything's in random. When you know the outcome, suddenly daily random events become obvious stepping stones to that outcome. So knowing the outcome is very, very important. Well, like I say, you can pick it up in Babylon. You can pick it up going up through the Roman Empire up into Northern Europe, and it gets bigger and bigger and bigger. From the perspective of how it's done, let's just put this structure in place. You've got this global cult here, and what it does is pass on advanced knowledge, A, of the agenda, and B, of the nature of reality, which is really, really important to keep from the people. It's nothing like we experience it. And over here, the same cult has created the sources of information that the target population receive and thus form their perceptions from. So it created the education system, or what passes for it. I mean, J.D. Rockefeller was one of the prime creators of the American education system. They own the media. They own they own science, overwhelmingly anyway. They own academia. They own all of this stuff. They own the sources of information that the people get their perceptions from, and they make sure that information is squeezed. And the information they don't want the public to know, they pass on through the secret society network. Now, this cult knowledge is way ahead at any point of what the public knows. So this is why someone like Aldous Huxley in Brave New World in 1932 was able to predict current events in terms of artificial wombs and all that stuff that's going on and the use of drugs and such like. It's also why Eric Blair, George Orwell, was able to predict telescreens and this technological control system. It's how I've been able to predict the future. People say to me, how did you predict the future? Well, I'm not predicting the future. I'm predicting the future that the cult plan wants to impose. And if you can uncover that plan, you can predict the future if nothing intervenes to stop the plan unfolding. And the reason I've been doing what I've been doing all these years is try to alert enough people so there is an intervention so it doesn't bloody happen. But if we're talking about where they want it to, they've had to control perception by manipulating information and controlling information. The end game is to connect artificial intelligence to the human brain and the human senses so that our perceptions come direct. And this is not me sitting here pulling it out of the ether. These are the words of people like Ray Kurzweil, the Google executive and so-called futurist, Elon Musk. Artificial intelligence could be the end of humanity. As we know it, true. And then he starts a company called Neuralink to connect the human brain to AI and computers. I mean, don't start me on Elon Musk. As frauds go, this guy is major bloody league. Anyway, so what they want to do is connect artificial intelligence to artificial intelligence, AI, to the human brain. And what Kurzweil said a few years ago now, because there comes a point where if you're going to transform society, you have to transform society. You have to do it in a way that people can see it. You can go under the radar for a long time, and all these years when I've been saying, this is coming, this is coming, this is coming, this is the plan. Oh, no evidence of it, mate, no evidence, because it's under the radar. And then suddenly, bang, here it is. Oh, my God.
In your face.
Yeah, so there comes a point where you have to break the surface, because to transform society, you've got to do it in a way that people can see it's being transformed, what's going on. At which point, two things happen. One, you stop hiding it and you start sales pitching it as if it's a good thing.
The Great Reset.
Yeah. And if we attach to artificial intelligence, we'll be godlike and superhuman. That's a quote from Kurzweil, who bloody knows that it's subhuman thereafter. And then the other thing happens is once you've broken the surface and once you've entered the room and people are starting to go, what's going on? You've got to get to the end as fast as you bloody can. And that's why we're at breakneck speed now. And that end game is to attach artificial intelligence to the human brain so that perceptions come direct, which means that other perceptions can't manifest because your perception's coming from artificial intelligence. It's thinking for you. And Ray Kurzweil said that by 2030, which is a big year for them, so many things come into 2030, artificial intelligence will be attached to the human brain and will do, from that point, more and more human thinking until human thinking is basically negligible. Connection to the human brain is, people like Musk are talking about, they're putting chips in bloody monkeys and all that stuff. I'll tell you about Musk. Musk's a front man. He's a out there sales pitcher. He's sales pitching electric cars. He's sales pitching Neuralink. He's sales pitching, we'll come to that, low orbit satellites, beaming 5G at every, and 6G, 7G to come at every inch of the planet, which is all part of what I'm talking about. And he's a sales pitcher. So in so many ways, you remember those little rice-like microchips, or we're going to get microchipped, and thousands of people in microchip with those things in Sweden, for instance, so they can open doors, the lazy bastards, so you can't push it open. But actually, that is actually a diversion. You got to look for the diversions. All the time there's diversions. You're on the motorway, you're on the freeway, and you're heading towards you hope the truth. And all the time there's slip roads to take you off. And one of them is the little chip, because the connection of AI to the human brain is nanotechnology. It's not stuff you can see. What Kurzweil has said is that the AI will connect us to the cloud. Now, what is the cloud? It's a massive electromagnetic field or fields that's 5G, 6G, 7G to come. And so if you want to connect the human body, everybody, to the cloud, then you have to have the cloud on every inch of the planet. Now, you can put up your towers everywhere, and you can do the urban areas and what have you, but you can't do every inch of the planet. To do that, you need low orbit satellites. And so Elon Musk is through SpaceX, everything's bloody X with him, is the leading guy, again, a front man. I mean, I watched an interview with Musk on the Joe Rogan show. And Rogan said at some point, I can't believe you've got to be an alien to do all that you do. And you're in this company, your company, and you're inventing this, you're inventing that. Well, hold on, Joe. What if he's not? What if he's not doing any of that? What if other people are doing that and he's fronting it up? Pretty much more likely when you see how long he spends on bloody Twitter X every day. So what the idea is, he's got, SpaceX has got permission already from the FCC, another cult-owned organization, control the regulatory agencies, you get what you want. Thousands, tens of thousands actually, of satellites, low orbit satellites, to beam this stuff at every inch of the planet. And the idea is that we are, through AI and this self-replicating nanotechnology, connected to the cloud. So the cloud starts doing our thinking. It starts influencing our perceptions directly. There's a reason why the cult doesn't want us to know about the nature of reality. Because if we did, then the world would just open up. And some very simple things would open it up. For instance, let's start with this. If you said to people, when you look through your eyes, can you see everything in the space you're looking at? Most people would say, yeah, of course I can. No, you can't. What you can see is the narrow band of frequency that's so small, it's hysterical. It's ridiculous, called visible light. According to mainstream science, the electromagnetic field is about 0.005% of what exists in the universe in terms of energy in all its forms. Some say as high as 0.5%, it's tiny, whatever. And visible light, which is the only band of frequency we can see, is a fraction of the 0.005%. We're basically blind, right? So when people say, like me, this world is being manipulated from other realms that are unseen, they think you're mad because, well, I can see everything. Why can't I see them? Well, you can see virtually nothing. Now, if you cared as a system about human knowledge and human awareness, then from a very early age, kids would be taught this as a matter of course. When you look through your eyes, you're only seeing a band of frequency, and there are other realities sharing the same space. Well, let's start from the base. Who are we? Who are we? Are we the body? No. Well, we're obviously not the body because that's got 70 years and 10, and that's the end of it. So what are we then? Are we our thoughts? Are we our emotions? Well, even that, I think, can be put in another light. What are we ultimately? We are a state of awareness. Forget the body, forget all form. We're a state of awareness. So the question then comes, how aware are we? In other words, how much of this infinite field of consciousness going on into infinity are we aware of? The more we expand our perceptions into that field, the more insight we get, the more knowledge we get, the more awareness we get.
The more we know, we don't know.
Exactly. And the more you become myopic in your accessing of this field, the more myopic you become in your perceptions. So if you take that, what I've just said, of this smear of visible light, academia, science, medicine, politics, media, all the information that they're giving us, these experts, oh, he's an expert, we've got an expert on now, is coming from that smear of 0.005%. And you're telling me that what you're saying is the only possibility? And I've always been driven by the philosophy of, in this case, of Socrates in ancient Greece, who is said to have said, words to the effect of, wisdom is knowing how little we know. So once you come from that perspective, that whatever, and this is one thing that can be said without any fear of contradiction. It cannot be challenged. Whatever we know or think we know, there's always more to know. This is what Socrates was talking about. And thus, when you know nothing, there's a chance you might be open to knowing something and not shutting it out because you think you know it all and all you need to know. And so I've always been driven by that. So whatever I think I know at one point, I know there's a lot more to know. So I keep going deeper and deeper in the rabbit hole in search of what there is not to know. I took psychedelics once in a Brazilian rainforest in 2003, ayahuasca it was, under a controlled, in a controlled situation, people who knew what they were doing. And I went into another state of consciousness, big time altered state of consciousness for 5 hours. And a woman's voice, female voice, just took a female form, as loud as mine is now, talked to me for 5 hours about the illusory nature of reality, how it was not how we thought it was, and it was not how we experienced it. And I had instant recall of all the word, of all the information afterwards for some reason. And I came back to England and I started looking at the different scientific disciplines. And I realized that if they'd only talk to each other, they've already got the fact that the world that we think we're experiencing is not anything like we're experiencing. But you know, you've got the different disciplines fighting over funding and fighting over prestige, and they're at war with each other. So they don't talk to each other. And if you just take it back and you pick out the bits, they've already got, especially quantum physics and that whole area, I've got a tremendous amount of information confirming this reality is not how we think it is. But you have to keep that from the target population, because you don't want them realizing that they are consciousness, having a brief human experience, and thus have the power to dictate their own reality. You want them to think that who they are is a human body with its labels. So, and once you can get the population, for instance, to self-identify with the labels, like I am white, I am black, I am brown, I am Christian, I am Muslim, I am Jewish.
And with all these new gender identities, it's getting a little bit worse.
Well,
yeah.
well, that is a very significant point, which I've made many times over the last couple of years or so. Okay, they want us to self-identify with the labels of a human life. So that's who we believe we are. So when you say to someone, hello, nice to meet you, who are you? They'll give you their name, they'll give you perhaps their location, their birthplace, their job, and all that stuff. But they won't say to you, oh, I'm a point of attention within infinite awareness, nice to meet you. And the other person says, oh, yes, so am I, nice to meet you, I thought I recognized you. No, it's all labels, it's all labels. And so you want people to identify with labels, because then they're not identifying with the true I, consciousness, that which continues after what we call death. And so what better way to get people further and further away from that perception of self than to start subdividing the labels and subdividing the labels and subdividing the labels. So now we have people who self-identify the I not with an expression of infinite awareness, a unique expression, but as whatever their sexuality is, wherever they want to put it. You know what I mean? It's like, what? And what's happening is the myopia of self-identity is getting smaller and smaller and smaller. And as it does, you are perceptually, then in terms of influence, therefore, withdrawing from consciousness, expansion level of consciousness. And if you talk to a woker, I mean, it's like talking to someone looking down the wrong end of a telescope. Their perception of reality and self and the world is so bloody narrow, it's unbelievable. And the reason the woke mentality is taking over the world, even though the vast majority of people in the world don't want it, is because it's the cult agenda. So all the corporations that I talked about earlier and those connections in BlackRock, all the corporations, all the media, Silicon Valley, governments are all pushing the woke agenda because it's the cult agenda, even though the vast majority of the population don't want it, think it's crazy. I've had a phrase I've been using for decades: what you fight, you become. I think the evidence for that is overwhelming. You say, we must fight for this. It's like, it was a great quote from Tony Blair. Don't quote him very often.
No.
We must fight for peace. So explain that then, Tone. Give me the sequence that works out with fighting for peace. We don't have to fight. We have to stop cooperating. It's very different. If someone comes out the White House or Downing Street and says we've had a discussion and this is what we're going to do, you don't have to go and smack Sunak in the mouth or Biden to stop it. You just say, not doing it. In enough numbers, not doing it. I remember years ago, you'll remember this, the poll tax in Britain.
I certainly remember it.
Yeah.
And the riots.
I've read
London.
about it, yeah.
Yeah,
Margaret
The
Thatcher.
downfall of Margaret Thatcher,
Yeah.
really.
Margaret Thatcher, who actually was the Iron Lady, except she wasn't. She was one of the most manipulated prime ministers in British history, but that's another story. All you got to do is let Margaret Thatcher think it was her idea, and you got it, really. But she came out with this poll tax, and it was a very unfair tax. And this was an interesting point. It affected the middle class as well as the working class. Now, if it only affected the working class, probably the middle class and the rest will go, well, it's not my problem. If it only affected the middle class, the working class will say, not my problem. But it affected both. So there was a unity. And lots of people refused to pay it. They didn't smack Margaret Thatcher in the mouth. They didn't fight. They just said, I'm not paying it. And what happened? Enough people didn't do it. And the poll tax not only got replaced, it brought her down, the Iron Lady, the impregnable Iron Lady. And all it took was enough people in relation to the poll tax saying, not doing it, not doing it. And it's just incredible. People say to me, what can we do? Well, okay, get yourself a pocket calculator. 8 billion people, a relative handful in full knowledge that are actually orchestrating this dystopia. I think I see a way out of this. And what we need to do is say no to the few. But first of all, we've got to get informed about how it's working. That's not so difficult now because, you look at what people like Sadiq Khan are doing in London and this war on motorists, this war on movement. People are starting to see this now. And the cameras going up everywhere. Well, the cameras are not going up for you, Les. I mean, in part they are, of course. They're going up to police these 15-minute communities where you'll only be allowed out with permission. Another thing, no, it's a scam, and you'll see it's not being done for the reasons they're telling you. I've been using a phrase since the 1990s, which has actually got quite widely used now: problem, reaction, solution, where you create a problem and you blame someone else or something else for it. At the second point of problem, reaction, solution, you want a reaction from the public that is one of fear, is one of anger, is one of anxiety, is one of outrage, whatever the problem is. And it allows you, who've covertly created the problem, to, at stage 3, offer the solutions to the problems you've created. But there's another version of it, which I call no problem reaction solution. And that's when you don't need a real problem, you need the perception of it. Because the rest of it takes care of itself. Once the perception of the problem is there, even though it's not a problem, you can still offer your solution because people believe it. The idea, first of all, is the great vast majority of the population have no vehicles. This is what the plan is. This is in their own documents. The World Economic Forum is pushing this. What you have, this is ULEZ cameras, anybody? You have cameras around that if you leave by vehicle, then they're number plate cameras. So every time you leave beyond what you're allowed to leave, and eventually it will be not at all, it's just a matter of sequence, you get fined. You know, this £12.50 fine if you drive in London with the wrong kind of vehicle, that's just the stepping stone towards what we're talking about. And they're openly talking about these 15-minute cities now. The idea is within these communities, people work from home, everything overwhelmingly. People have, cafes and stuff and everything that they, quote, need, according to the authorities, within that area. And you don't leave. And because this is all connected, the reason they want to go to a digital currency, and I wrote this in a book in 1992 called The Robots' Rebellion. The idea is, I said, was to get rid of cash, so there's no cash. Look at how cash is disappearing now, and replace it with a global, single electronic currency, ultimately, stepping stone towards it until you get there. And there's a few things about this digital currency. First of all, it's programmable. So it can decide what you can buy and what you can't because it's programmable. This is well known. And the other thing is that what you might say is, okay, we're going to have mass non-payment of fines in these 15-minute cities. I'm going to go out in my car and I don't care if you pick up my number plate, I'm not paying. With the digital currency, they'll take it out your bank account, right? And this is like they do in China.
No choice.
And so electric cars, first of all, are to stop the vast majority of having vehicles at all, because they're so bloody expensive for a start. But there's another reason. You can't have an autonomous car that's petrol and diesel. It's got to be electric and it's got to be computer driven. So at the moment, freedom, you get in your petrol diesel and you drive basically where you want. There's some places you can't go and stuff like military bases, but you can pretty much go where you want. With an autonomous electric car, it will decide where you can and cannot go. Because where they don't want you to go, it will not take you. The computer will not drive the car there. That's the idea. I was in a taxi last night going to the talk, and the taxi driver was talking about the fact that, his car is basically autonomous. He can't let it be because the rules at the moment, but they'll change. But it's autonomous. It was a Tesla or something like that. And so the electric car is not to save the world from climate change. It's to impose control. But if you said, okay, we're going to get rid of petrol diesel cars and we're going to bring electric cars because we don't want vast majority to have a car, and those who do have a car, we want to decide where they can and cannot go. Okay, that's what people go, you what? So you give them another excuse, saving the planet. The idea, and this is why they're rushing it so fast, because they have to get it in quick before enough people have sussed it to stop it, right? So you get it in quick. They control your money, they control what you can buy, they control through fines where you can go, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. There comes a point, they don't bloody care if you know, because AI is running the show now, and what are you going to do about it? Okay, you want to leave? Okay, fine. Okay, oh, you got no money. Oh, that's fine. You got no money now. Oh, by the way, we can wipe your bank account whenever we like. Thank you. This. They don't care. Once they reach a certain point of control through artificial intelligence, they don't bloody care if you know or not. And they're closing in on that now. when you see all the people saying we don't want this, but they do it anyway, they're closing in on that now. But virtual reality is an interesting point. Well, it's interesting for many reasons. If you get caught in the virtual reality world, what is that? That's another stage. Okay, label human, subdividing label human, taking you into cyberspace human. Where is I am infinite consciousness? All it is, has been, and ever can be. Where's that now? It's got your perception completely, and this is this is an interesting point. The reason that virtual reality is such a relevant thing is we're living in it. Those people in the Matrix movie, they went into the Matrix with their mind. They were outside the Matrix. They went in the Matrix with their mind. And this is a mind game that we're dealing with. It's a perceptual control system. And we can talk at the level of censorship and manipulating perception that way. But as you go out, like wisdom is knowing, with little we know. So what more do I know? I know. What more don't I know? And you go out and out, you realize that the control of perception is, it's almost laughable. It's so fundamental for this reason. Just after the turn of the millennium, I had this overwhelming feeling from somewhere that we live in a simulation, and that the limit of the simulation at this level, there are other levels, is the speed of light. And that's why the speed of light appears to be the fastest speed. But of course, it's well established that particles can communicate instantly, way beyond the speed of light. But those particles are not communicating, in effect, within the 5-sense reality of the speed of light. They're communicating in other realities. And so I just said that. And I said that what we call the laws of physics are actually the encoded laws of the simulation. So if you're creating a virtual reality game, then you encode within the game the limits of the game and how the game is played, right? That's the laws of physics. And that's why when people have near-death experiences and they leave the body, we'll come to the decoding mechanism of the matrix, which is the body-brain. They describe a totally different reality that doesn't conform to our laws of physics. So I talked about that. And then I started to notice, as the years passed, that more and more mainstream scientists were starting to talk about the possibility we live in a simulation. When I got that feeling, I looked around for others, and I just found Nick Bostrom at Oxford University. He was talking about this is probably a simulation, but the way he described it was different to the way I see it. But at least he was talking about it. And more people in science have started to talk about it, more and more the nearer we've got to present day. And I read an article in April 2021 in Scientific American by an academic, in which he said that he concluded this is a simulation, and that the limit of the simulation is the speed of light. And he likened the speed of light to processing speed. He says you can encode the rules of the game if you like, but you're still going to be limited by your processing speed. And so this is now becoming more and more talked about, not least because once you realize that this is a simulation, a lot of the mysteries of life disappear and become explainable. So we've had people like Max Tegmark at MIT, Massachusetts Institute of Technology, and he's written a book called Our Mathematical Universe, in which he points out that the physics of virtual reality games are basically the physics of our reality. The same thing, you could be broken down into numbers. And what I'm seeing so clearly now is that this explosion of technology that's playing out is actually mimicking the reality we're experiencing. It's another kind of technological version of what we're experiencing. So, for instance, holographics is getting more and more sophisticated to the point where it's getting closer and closer and closer to being as real as this. You talk about the metaverse and all that stuff. That's just the early stages of that. Where's self-identity now? You're in a maze within a maze within a maze. That's what it's about. It's a perception. This is a perceptual maze that's designed to stop us remembering the true nature of self and believing that we're whatever we're told we are. Well, I think we're in this human level of the simulation, and so what's decoding the simulation? Well, the body is, and the body's designed to do that. Again, this is mainstream science. You talk about the five senses. The five senses are basically what lock us into the matrix. When you perceive the world through the five senses, you're decoding the matrix. And so you are looking, again, mainstream science, at a situation where the five senses pick up frequency information. And the easiest way of describing how this works, again, the computer technology is mimicking it, is a computer and Wi-Fi. So the simulation is actually a field of information. It's not a construct. It's a field of information, like Wi-Fi. And what the body is doing, the five senses and the brain are doing, is decoding that information into this reality, which we experience as outside of us, but is actually in here. And so if you look at how it works, again, like I say, mainstream science, the five senses pick up wave field information, waveform information from this field of information, like Wi-Fi. And it turns it into electrical information. I mean, sound waves are a classic with the ears, but they all work like that, including the eyes. They turn these frequencies into electrical information, and then they are communicated to the brain. And there's different parts of the brain that specialize in the different senses, and they decode those senses and create a reality. And so we perceive the world outside of us, and we perceive it to be solid. It's holographic, digital holographic. This is what this reality is in here. It's an illusion of physicality. And what we're doing is what computers do, which is mimicking our reality. So you say to people who know nothing about computers that there is a field of information in this room, that if you tap into it, you can tap into a whole worldwide reality, which you can tap into in South Africa, in America, in Britain, anywhere. And if people didn't know about computers and Wi-Fi, they'd say, you're bloody mad, mate. Where is it? I can't see it, right? Well, you can hardly see anything. And then you say to them, so tell me about the internet. They'll say, well, it's videos and graphics and pictures and words on the computer screen. Yes, it is, but only on the computer screen.
That's the decoder.
Everywhere else, the internet does not exist in that form. It's a Wi-Fi field, or it's electronic codes, etc. And then you think, well, where is that? Where is that decoded version of the Wi-Fi field? It's in the computer. It's not here or here or here. It's inside the computer. It's mimicking the fact that this reality is inside here, right? And so you say to someone who does know about computers, basically this and Wi-Fi, the same thing. You say, oh, there's a field of information in this room that you can put on a computer screen, and they go, yeah, absolutely, Wi-Fi. I know about Wi-Fi. Yeah, everyone knows about Wi-Fi. This is the point. The only difference between I know about Wi-Fi and you're mad, mate, is knowledge. That's all it is. So if you can suppress knowledge, you get people to wave away the idea of what's actually happening as a nonsense and impossible, as long as you control their sense of what is possible. So, if you look at the these different encoded sequences within our reality, like pi and the Fibonacci number sequence, the fractal patterns which relate to the principles of holograms, of golden mean, golden section, divine proportion, all these things, where whether it's the way a plant grows, the way a tree grows, the way a storm develops, or the proportions of the human face, they just recur everywhere. I say they're computer codes. That's why they recur everywhere. They're computer codes within the simulation, and the genetic code is a computer code. And so you've got the Wi-Fi field of the matrix, and then you've got the body biological computer that decodes the Wi-Fi field into this reality. And that's the level of perceptual illusion that we're being subjected to. Now, this cult over here at the inner core knows that. Much of the cover army within the cult doesn't know that, but the inner core knows that. It doesn't want the public to know that. And imagine the perceptual power of control and manipulation if you know that and they don't. And like I say, the way that we're manipulated is just so vast and fundamental. But the answer is always the same. We take control of our perceptions back. You know, if you have a dream and you know it's a dream. Have you ever had that? I have quite a lot of them.
Like a lucid dream.
Yeah, well, you're in a dream, but you're aware it's a dream. So the dream stops having an effect on you. You're now observing it. It's not like, oh my God, what's going to happen? Oh God, it's a cliff. Oh my God. You're just observing it because you know it's a dream. You know it's an illusion. You can get to a point in this reality where, okay, we're in this reality because the body is decoding it, because that's why this is the only reality that most people ever see, because it's being decoded for them. But you're in this world in that sense, but you're not of this world because you know what it is. You know it's perceptual trickery, and you don't get pulled in with the drama and all the things that pull people in, and then they realize they were irrelevant, but they pulled them in at the time. You start to step back and observe reality instead of reality controlling you and dictating everything. And the more that you reach that point where you become an observer, the less and less control this reality has over your emotions and over your perception. Yeah, glitches in the matrix, what are they?
Like deja vu, stuff like that.
But they're things, they are perceptions in this case, that do not reflect the matrix program. So it starts to disturb the program. And the more people that, and of course, I mean, people say, oh, I wish there were more people awake. Well, yeah, so do I. But my God, if I go back to 1990, 91, and I mean, I couldn't fill a phone box with interest. Now you look at it. So going through that level of ridicule meant that I let go of the fear of what other people think. And given, I didn't know at the time, but given what I was going to talk about further along, which was really, really far out, if I'd have still retained that concern about how other people saw me, I was not going to talk about that. Once it had gone, you just open your mouth and you say what you think. You don't go through this mental gymnastics. How do I say this that they won't think I'm crazy? What do I leave out so they don't think I'm crazy? You just say it. Because the deal is, this is what I think, and what you think is entirely up to you of what I say. That's called the free flow of information. And that's how we learn from each other, by hearing. There's no one that's not got anything to say that's valid, nothing at all, no one. So let's hear it. And then we'll all learn from each other, and we'll know more about what we didn't know before. The key reason why perceptions matter is perceptions generate frequencies. This is mainstream science. And the frequencies we give off relate to the nature of the emotions and the thoughts that we have. So fear and anxiety and depression and resentment and regret, all these things are low, slow frequencies. And joy and happiness are very high frequencies, are very much more powerful frequencies, actually. And so if you can manipulate through this simulation the vast majority of the human population into low frequency states, then they're giving off those frequencies. And one of the things I've learned over the decades is that there are entities in the unseen, very close to this reality, but outside of it visually, that feed off those energies. There's a great line in the first Matrix movie where the Morpheus character makes a statement that is probably the truest statement ever made in a fictional movie. Not fictional, really. He held up a battery and he said, the Matrix is a computer-generated dream world designed to turn humans into one of these. And we are being turned into energetic generators of low vibrational energy, which these entities, which are called the demonic in various religions and cultures, they feed off that. And if you can keep creating wars and conflict and suffering and deprivation and stuff, you are going to generate enormous amounts of this energy, which is what they're feeding off. And so if you look through history, it's just been one after the other, one after the other, one after the other. And if you travel the world too, I mean, I've been over 60 countries or so now, the last 34 years. Most of the human race is not having a good time. They're trying to survive another day, kids in mines and, most of it in Africa and South America, Central America, Asia and all that stuff. They're not having a good time. And therefore, they're in these low vibrational states, giving off this energy, which these demonic entities are feeding off. So that is one part of why this, a massive part of why this simulation has been constructed. It's been constructed to control perception so that it generates that low vibrational energy, which they feed off. And the idea to attach AI to the human brain is to artificially invoke that those perceptions to generate that energy. But if you are in an audience, which is the kind I speak to, that is starting to awaken beyond the program and start to tap into consciousness, high vibrational consciousness, then, and especially when you're stimulating that by the presentation you're doing and the information that you are presenting, then that high vibrational energy comes off the audience. And of course, it becomes an amazing electromagnetic field. I just like to see a world where everyone has the right to their opinion. We have the free flow of information and view. And we have two things, both relating to respect. First of all, self-respect. That's something that's not seen for the vital, important expression of us that it is. Those people that do what authority wants without question have no self-respect. Self-respect would say, okay, I'm hearing you, but I'm going to check this out. The second group, it says, I don't want to do what you tell me, but I'm going to do it because I fear the consequences of not doing it. There's your self-respect gone. You've conceded your self-respect. Those two mentalities have been responsible for every tyranny in history. Because fascists and communists don't bring in fascism and communism. There's never enough of them. What brings it in is the population's acquiescence to the few who bring it in. And then you've got the third group, which is that which has self-respect, because it says, I can see what you're doing and I'm not cooperating. I don't care what you say about me. I don't care what you do. I'm not cooperating. It's self-respect. My self-respect won't let me not do that. And it's self-respect in that third group that's brought down every tyranny in history because they've not cooperated. And then there's respect for others to have a different view, which is of course diminishing greatly, and the woke mentality doesn't exist at all. And there'll be some people that will listen to this interview and they'll say, "Oh, that Ike bloke's got some interesting things to say. I agree with that. I don't agree with that. Don't agree with that. I agree with that." And that's fine because that's their unique spin on their own perception. They're not getting their perceptions off a bloody shelf. They're coming to their own, which is all that I'm looking for. There are many, many people who've got a bit of the puzzle and not got a lot of it. Men are being demasculized, if you like, and it's systematic because you've got the masculine energy, which says, no, I'm not having it. And women can have the same. And you've got testosterone levels falling. You've got sperm counts falling. There's a bloody good reason for that as well. And you've got a lot of men who have lost their masculinity in their response and their desire to protect all that stuff that comes from the masculine.
Right.
You don't want masculinity because masculinity is a problem because it's willing to say, no, I'm not having it. It's willing to be in that third group. And so when they started targeting toxic masculinity, it was obvious to me why they were doing it. And also, it was obvious to me they were coming for the women next as well, which they're now, of course, doing. And there's a reason for that because I have this phrase, if something comes out of nowhere and it's suddenly everywhere, it's the agenda. Someone's pressed a button on the next stage. And so the transgender thing came out of nowhere. And suddenly it was everywhere. And suddenly you don't use the right pronouns, you lose your job or something. What? Don't call me mister. I couldn't care less. But there's a reason for why this is happening. And it's all to do also with why men are being targeted and why women are being now targeted. And that was kind of described by Aldous Huxley in Brave New World, the no gender human, where the species was no longer procreated in the way that it has up to this point. It's procreated technologically. And what we're seeing is a movement, slow at first, but it's meant to get faster, from what you might call human 1.0, the biological human, to human 2.0, which is far more synthetic human, which is why synthetic biology is a massively expanding area of science these days. So the synthetic human would not procreate. It would be technologically procreated, which is what Aldous Huxley talked about in his world state hatcheries and all that stuff, where people would be bred in certain castes based on their intelligence that they were allowed to have, and that the state would bring up the children. It will be the end of parents. And we're seeing attacks on the parents all the time. You've got the social services taking children away from loving parents on a spurious excuse on a vast scale, not just in this country, but around the world. I've done a lot of research into that. And you've got schools and authorities having more and more control over the children and their upbringing being taken away from parents. This is all moving towards this, step by step. It's what I call the totalitarian tiptoe. And so if you're going to move from the biological male-female procreated human to this no gender human, not transgender human, no gender human, then you've got a series of steps to go through. Before you can physically, quote physically, install something, you've got to psychologically prepare for it. So this is why they're targeting the kids in the schools and everywhere else with this transgender baloney. And before you confuse gender, you have to confuse gender, and that's the period we're in now. So if you want to confuse gender in little kids, then get a bloke with a beard in a dress to read them stories in the classroom or a library, and then get them to strut their stuff, which is what they're increasingly doing in places like America and Britain too. And again, it's outrageous, but it's being promoted and protected by the state. Why? Because it's a cult agenda. And even though parents don't want it overwhelmingly, it still happens because it's a cult agenda. Therefore, all the authorities are behind it. So someone had an idea, and everyone has an idea. Well, I've drag queens reading stories. Everyone had the same idea at the same time. It's crazy. And so the idea is you confuse gender. Like the BBC says there are now 100 genders. That's a form of insanity. Confusing gender on the road to fusing gender. And so the transgender activists, some of them will know this, but most of them will not, need to understand they're being played like a stringed instrument. They're just being used as a vehicle towards the no gender human. So everything connects in the end. It's a vast web, and all these different apparently random dots connect. And so that's really why the transgender thing has come out of nowhere, and everything is pushing it. Corporations, governments, everyone's pushing it, even though the public don't want it, because it's the agenda, and that's the real reason for it.